Hey, this is Garret Price from Dynasty Nerds, and let's talk about the three guys that I think really raised their stock for fantasy at the NFL Combine. So before we get into all of the actual players, let me preface this video because as awesome as the NFL Combine is, and it really is awesome, it's so fun to watch these guys compete, run, all of these things, it is one of the more overrated evaluation pieces of all of the things that we look at. When we're looking at some of the analytical models, when we're watching tape, when we're looking at college production, all of these things, when you look at the Combine numbers, they, for me, weigh pretty low. And in fact, we've seen over recent years that, specifically at the wide receiver position, athletic ability has almost had an inverse correlation to success. So I don't think we should overhype these players just because of what they've done. But I do think it is a piece of the puzzle. And look, whether we like it or not, NFL teams do value this stuff. So this will change draft capital for some guys that might have been a third rounder but now are a second rounder, or things like that. So while this is not the end all be all, I do think it's something that's worth discussing. So let's start with our first guy, Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell, he was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school, going into college. Didn't go to Texas originally, though. He was originally at Georgia, then transferred this past year to Texas, and really helped himself this past week at the Combine. We're talking about a 6'2" guy weighing in at 205 pounds, so good height, good weight, and the numbers were better than I expected. He ran a 4.34 40-yard dash, blazing. Third best out of all the wide receivers, regardless of size, third best in the class at wide receiver. Then he posted an 11'4" broad jump. Yeah, you heard that right, 11'4". That was the best in the class. And then a 39.5-inch vert. So everything that he did at the Combine really helped solidify his draft stock. Now, originally I had him more as a beginning of the third round type of guy. I think this helped bump him up into the second round. I think we're going to see him probably middle of the second round because with those size, speed, numbers, it's pretty impressive. There's not a lot of guys that can do that and still have a decently productive college career, which he didn't put up crazy numbers over his college career, but in his last year with Texas, 55 receptions, 845 yards, and 11 touchdowns. So he had a good season, not an eye-popping season, but he had a good season overall at Texas. So I think he's the one, maybe of any of these guys, that helped kind of boost himself up, maybe even a whole round because of his Combine performance at the NFL Draft. Next guy I have on the list is a running back out of USC. Now, he didn't originally start off at USC, started off at South Carolina, but his name is MarShawn Lloyd. Now, I do have a slight bias. I've been a big MarShawn Lloyd guy for a little while now, and in the beginning of his career, it didn't work out super great, but he had a pretty solid year this past year, 116 attempts, 820 yards. That's good for 7.1 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns. Did some things in the receiving game too. Only 13 receptions, but big numbers when he caught the ball, 232 yards through the air. So did quite a few good things. And he ended up having a 90th percentile speed score at the NFL Combine. That's right, 90th percentile, because he weighed in at 220 pounds. Now, there are a lot of people before the Senior Bowl wondering if he was going to be in that 205, maybe 210 range. He weighed in at 217. So that was already a very positive sign for a guy like MarShawn Lloyd. But after weighing in at 217, I was a little worried that he would come to the Combine a little bit lighter. We see that happen at times. Guys lose 3 or 4 pounds before the Combine. And I was worried he was going to be down into that 210, 212 range. Nah, he did the opposite. He gained another 3 pounds, but it did not affect his performance during the Combine at all. He put up a 4.46 40-yard dash, which is really, really solid. Like I said, 90th percentile speed score, 36-inch vert, 25 reps on the bench. So very, very strong player. And you see a good stiff arm in his game, so not overly surprising. So I am very, very interested in MarShawn Lloyd. And I think he went from a guy that might have been the fifth or sixth guy off the board at the running back position to now maybe being one of the top 3 guys off the board. So really excited to see what lies ahead for MarShawn Lloyd. Last one that I think really helped his stock this past week, Brian Thomas. Now, you might be watching this and say, well, Brian Thomas was probably already a first-round pick. And I think you're right. I think he was going to be a first-round pick either way, but we see guys that we think are going to be first-round picks, thinking of like the Michael Pittman Jr. T. Higgins season. That's similar to this where it's a deep wide receiver class, so a few guys maybe going to drop out of that first round. A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf from their year. So he could have been one of those guys that falls out of the first round to get snatched up by a team early in the second round. But I think that's out the window now after what he posted. He came in at 6'3", so great height, 209 pounds, great weight, and ran a 4.33. That was second only to Xavier Worthy in the 40-yard dash. Had a 1.5 10-yard split, so really good in that short area quickness as well. And he was a 4-star coming out of college or coming out of high school, and he was one of the top receivers in his class, top 100 guy. He had 68 receptions for 1,177 yards, and get this, 17 touchdowns last season. That's right, 17 touchdowns. So I think he now goes from a guy that was fringe first round, second round to maybe even top 20, maybe even top 15. When you're putting up those kind of numbers with that type of production, that's pretty tough to top. And he's got good film behind it, so a lot to like there with Brian Thomas. So excited to see where all of these guys go in the NFL draft, but then most importantly for us, where they end up going in our rookie drafts.